Doctor. I'm a Time Lord. I'm from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of Kasterborous.
I hope the ears are a bit less conspicuous this time.
You might be a doctor, but I am
I'm a doctor, but probably not the one who looks good.
Absolutely fantastic.
All of time and space, everything that ever happened or ever will. Where do you want to start?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bigger on the Inside, the new Who Doctor Who Watch Along podcast. There's a lot of news this week, isn't there, Tim?
It's full of news and full of techie problems that I'm sure we won't be baffled by in the slightest.
Aye, absolutely. So, we usually do our introductions, but there's just so much to get through. I think we're just going to jump straight into it. Before the big thing, we have some news from former Doctor Peter Capaldi.
Hooray!
He's done a very in-depth interview, kind of to promote the Suicide Squad, and he makes some interesting observations, kind of comparing the experience of Doctor Who to the Suicide Squad, which really he thinks is very, very different. And he also makes some comments about Jodie leaving, and also when he took over from Matt.
Yeah, cool. What does he say about? I saw the Suicide Squad, so I'll talk about it in a little bit. But what's PC got to say for himself?
Right, I'll just talking about the character that he played, the Thinker. He said that when it came to the role, generally I can't find the exact quote right now. But that, in a sense, it felt like going from the Doctor to playing the Thinker, he was very much kind of returning to a role that was much more himself, similar to Malcolm Tucker from The Thick of It.
Oh, that's interesting. So he found... Because the last sort of big role he did, really, I know he's done theatre and stuff, but since, like, Doctor Who, this is, like, his next big thing, really, I guess.
Mm.
And I'd speak to you now whilst looking at this photograph of me and Peter Capaldi. So it's quite disturbing to see him looking back at us as we talk about him. But I like that he that it's one of those things that when he's talking about it, Peter especially seems very open about it, and he talks about his time very openly. Whereas I feel some past actors are maybe slightly defensive about it and make sure they only speak of the positive side of it, whereas Peter's quite open. Even when he was leaving, I remember he was on the Graham Norton show and saying it takes up a lot of time being Doctor Who.
It's interesting, he kind of said that playing the Doctor, he felt like during his tenure he had to almost become a different person, and that then he really felt the responsibility. And I guess this came from him being a fan of the show as well, but that being a fan of the show, he understood what a big role it was, and he felt this responsibility kind of being a figurehead for the show, and that he found it much easier being able to playing the Thinker, just he was able to relax into it, and also he was part of an ensemble, so it wasn't all kind of riding on him as kind of this leading man.
Yeah, no one's out there going, I'm gonna be just like the Thinker. I'm gonna make a giant starfish. That's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, I get that. I always think that must be something of a burden, maybe slightly, when you get cast in one of these big roles like Doctor Who or a Marvel thing. You know, there's so much. I don't want to say baggage, but I will say extra curriculum that comes with these roles. It's not just turning up, saying your lines. You've got to do the press stuff. You've got to do the conventions. You've got to do the book signings. You've got to do the kids' charities. You know, you've got to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel that must eat in a lot of your time. Like, when you say someone's being cast as Doctor Who, that's not all they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of... I mean, he actually says that he finds it very interesting that kind of James Gunn... He actually doesn't think James Gunn, despite casting both himself in this and Karen Gillan Guardians of the Galaxy, he doesn't think he's actually seen Doctor Who.
I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've ever heard him mention it. I don't think he has.
Well, the thing is, he said that...
I mean, he must know what it is, and he must have seen Peter as Doctor Who to to have some reference point. Like, you can't possibly go, oh yeah, we'll cast Peter Capaldi as the Thinker, what's he done? And Google his name and go, and not come across Doctor Who. I mean, it's the first line of his obituary.
Well, actually, it's interesting because Peter says that the reason James cast him is because he saw the Fig Fit film in The Loop, and he really liked Capaldi's performance in that. He's not sure if James even saw the thick of it. He just saw it in The Loop, and really liked Peter Capaldi and cast him based off that rather than Doctor Who.
Awesome. Cool, yeah, I like that. I like that sort. Yeah, that's kind of nice. That sort of like characters not being typecast or something. Because like David, like when he left Doctor Who, deliberately did lots of other stuff since then, but lots of different things that weren't Doctor Who-esque. But in the last few years, especially, like has sort of fallen back into that fandom slightly with stuff like Jessica Jones and Good Omens, and you know he's going to be doing Around the World in 80 Days. You know, stuff like that. That sort of mythical side is slowly coming back into his career. So I feel like I like it when like they kind of come back to sci-fi stuff at some point. It's a nice little touchstone, I feel.
Yeah. Of course, this interview isn't... Well, actually, before we move on to the next bit, I was just wondering, because you've seen The Suicide Squad, the James Gunn film. What is it like? And I'm actually wondering, because from the kind of promo stuff, it struck me that Capaldi was kind of part of this ensemble, but he wasn't particularly a standout. But reading this, it strikes me that... Is Capaldi rather prominent in the film?
Have you got any intention of seeing this film? How spoilery can I go?
I feel like I'll probably see it down the line because I like the Guardians films. They're probably my favorite Marvel films. Yeah. So I am interested to see this. So maybe keep it light on
let's spoil it. Yeah. Okay, so there is The Suicide Squad. You know, Idris Elba, Margot Robbie, Joel Killman, whoever plays Rick Flag. I forget his name. And you know, King Shark, and there's all these amazing characters. And they're on this mission to get into this building to sort of stop the mutation of this creature called Starro, who is a giant starfish who was found in space by Peter Capaldi's character. And he's brought him to Earth and he's sort of doing experiments on him and stuff like that. So Peter Capaldi he isn't the bad guy, but he's like the human bad guy, if you see what I mean. And he's sort of his kid. This isn't a spoiler, so this is just a plot in the film. He's sort of at one point taken in by the squad for questioning and stuff, and reluctantly becomes a member of the squad.
Oh wow! So he is very plot-wise. He's very relevant.
Yeah, it's a while before he shows up, but once he's in it a lot.
Okay, that's cool. And so, what are your thoughts on the?
Great.
No, sorry, finish your thing.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, he's great in it. Like, he's doing a Scottish accent and stuff, and it's one of those things where, like, if I see any Doctor Who actor in something, I'm always going, it's the Doctor for, like, a good few episodes. But, like, as soon as you see Capaldi in this, you're like, oh, this isn't the Doctor. You instantly think it's this new guy. You know, he's wearing a tracksuit, he's got all the stuff sticking out his head, and he's really great in it, and the movie is the best DC EU movie since this all started with Man of Steel. This is the best one. And I know that's not saying a lot because a lot of them aren't that great, but I really loved Shazam.
Yeah, I really like Shazam and Wonder Woman. I think I actually think I like those as much, if not more, than what Marvel's been putting out.
Yeah, they're like two of my favourites as well, as Shazam and Wonder Woman, and this is better than those two, I feel. We saw Wonder Woman together, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, this is just an amazing film. I really enjoyed it. I sort of lost. I know you're supposed to, the suspension of disbelief you can kind of run with for the full thing. I sort of struggled with it in the third act a little bit, but by that point you're fully embraced in it, and it's great, and it's, you know, it's James Gunn, so it's so brilliantly directed, and it is so comic booky, but not in like a Scott Pilgrim way or a Joel Schumacher Batman way. It's just like the costumes look amazing, everything's very bright, everything's very cool, there's some great set pieces in it. You don't have to have seen any of the other DC movies to get it. There's no this might be a slight spoiler for DC fans, but I'm guessing if a DC fans listen to this, they've already seen it. But there's no, like, cameo from Superman or the Flash, or there's nothing like that. So there's nothing overwhelming about it, which I know sometimes you don't particularly like about Marvel films, do you? That sort of, like, having to bring it back down to the connected universe stuff. There isn't really anything like that. Like, Superman gets a mention, and Batman gets a mention.
But you don't need to...
that's about it.
Yeah, you don't need to watch the DC films to know who Superman and Batman are.
No, and everybody gets sort of reintroduced, and, like, especially characters like Harley Quinn, who people sort of know, even if they haven't seen the movies, they're in sort of the zeitgeist of media and stuff. They sort of get a very, very brief, like, 1 or 2 lines introduction. Because what I remember with the David Ayer, well, not David Ayer movie, but the Suicide Squad movie that came out before, there is so much, and now here's Deathstroke, and here's a list of things he's done, and here's El Diablo, and a load of stuff he's done. With this, it's like, literally, mate, within like the first 5 minutes, there was a moment in it, and it's in the trailer, so I'll say it. It's where you see the squad, and they're walking in front of a giant Stars and Stripes flag, a giant American flag, and they're walking in front of it, and it says like this, that's like the opening of the movie, and it's like at that point, you know when something clicks in a movie, and you're just fully in from it from the very start, and it wasn't like I had any sort of worries going into it or anything, and within those first 5 minutes, I was like, I'm gonna fully enjoy this, and it is just great. The first 10 minutes are spectacular.
Okay, fantastic. I'm probably going to check it out based on that. Sounds like a lot of fun.
If you can,
yeah,
cinema.
I should be able to.
Definitely see
I should be able to. Yeah, there's a cinema near me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the last thing that Capaldi mentions in this interview is he's asked about Jodie leaving and if he has any advice for her. And really, he says, nah, she doesn't need my advice. I think she's great. She's amazing. And then he kind of reflects on his own experience of when he took over from Matt. And it's really nice. He's really appreciative of kind of how gracious Matt had been to him when he was leaving, especially since he's left himself and he knows all the emotions that you go through and the processing. So he kind of just takes some time to kind of acknowledge how great Matt was when he was taking over from him and how kind he was to him. Of course.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. I remember seeing an interview with Capaldi where he mentions that Matt Smith gave him his watch or something like that, something quite symbolic with the Doctor, and then, you know, because it must be strange turning up and seeing somebody else in your costume. Do you have a quote there from PC?
Yeah, he says, it's an odd thing that happens. I always remember when I took over from Matt. It was only when I left that I realised how gracious Matt had been to me, because he's going through the emotional turmoil of leaving and took the time to be gracious to me. It's like the whole Doctor Who experience. It's not over until it's over, you know. You don't really see it clearly until you've been through it.
Oh, it's always nice when he pops by to say hello, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. No problem. You know, I just want to be kind and pop in.
Dear, we got a lot more of that to look forward to in a couple of years.
So
yeah, I like it when, because what I really liked about when David left is they released a photo afterwards of David and Matt both together, and they've never done that since. So I always like it when we hear like these little stories of the handover stuff. But I think it should be more, not more public at the time, but like, here's a picture of Peter and Matt on the set together and they're wearing each other's costume. You know, something like that. Just, yeah. I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to know that there isn't a defensiveness or a possessiveness over the role.
Exactly right. And I think there was back in Classic Who.
Yeah, you hear stories from Tom Baker saying when he's over John Pertwee.
Yeah, like John Pertwee didn't really talk to Tom Baker, and Tom Baker didn't really talk to Peter Davison. I think Peter and Colin got along, but then Colin obviously was fired and didn't turn up, and then Sylvester did it into Paul, and apparently that was a very nice sort of thing.
Although apparently
it's quite interesting.
The only one really I've heard about enduring friendship from Classic Who was between Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee. Apparently they had a really good relationship.
Oh really? I think I have seen. I don't know if I've read that, but I could definitely tell that from interviews when I've seen them together.
I'd say that kind of all the Classic Who partnerships I've seen. I mean, I've seen clips of the 5 Doctors, but I've primarily seen the 3 Doctors, and I think it is notable what a good back and forth they have in terms of chemistry.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I look forward to doing that. This year we'll do. And will we do the 5 Doctors this year? We will. October.
Do you think so?
September. Yes. Well, we did the.
The 5 Doctors.
Last
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 Doctors is the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to do a thing because I've got the DVD and there's like a remastered special edition version and the original version. So it'll be interesting. I'll do a poll on Twitter and we'll see which one people think we should watch.
Brilliant. So,
cool.
Are you ready for
That's it?
big...
No more news.
Yeah, nothing else notable has happened in the world of Doctor Who this week at all.
Before we get into the big news, can I just say, I mentioned this episode 1, but maybe if you're a new listener, you haven't heard this before. After this episode, I'm only mentioning it now because I will probably forget later. After this episode goes out, we'll be going on a slight break for about a month. There will be videos and stuff uploaded within that month. There's going to be perhaps, we'll put that interview up. I won't confirm it yet, but there's an interview coming. There's actually 2 interviews coming. There's like a behind the scenes video with Harrison and lots of fun stuff coming. But as for the watch along and for this actual podcast, that will end for a month, just because I'm moving. And it's easier to just give it a rest for a little bit so that we can appreciate it again when we come back in September time.
Aye. So...
Sorry, big news. Go on.
Big news. As we heard earlier this week, and we've already reported on, Jodie Whittaker is leaving the role of the Doctor. But perhaps even bigger than that...
What? I didn't hear that. Harry, if I wanted to hear more information about that, where could I go to find out some information about that?
Well, I guess you could follow our podcast. We're available on YouTube, iTunes, Acast, Spotify, probably somewhere else that I can't think of right now.
Probably.
And we also have a Twitter, an Instagram, all kinds of things.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's enough plugging that we've done. Yeah, Jodie's going. And who else is going, Harry?
The showrunner, Chis Chibnall, which for me is even bigger because when the showrunner changes, the whole show pretty much changes. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been ever since the news has come out and now, I've been continuously speculating who might not, and will definitely not be the next Doctor Who showrunner. I've got 21 names. I've got 21 names.
That's a lot of names. Can I just say, the fact that we say we're excited about this doesn't say that we dislike Chibnall or anything like that. But the whole rebranding of the show is just generally very exciting. So you've got 21 names. I think I've got 12. So okay. I believe we've split these into categories, haven't we? We've done likely to be... well, not likely. There's a possibility they could be showrunner. They've never written for the show before and never going to happen.
That's it, yeah. I've got them the old guard, the TV writers, other TV writers, and not going to happen. So
okay, so what should we start with? Should we start with the old guard? Should we start with those guys first?
I think we'll start with the guy who I think everyone was expecting to take over from Moffat, Mark Gatiss.
Yes, he was on mine as well.
Yeah. So I feel like Mark Gatiss was a very prominent writer for like 10 solid years on the show. He didn't write for Chibnall Zero though, which makes it less likely. But I feel like lots of people were expecting him to all but be a shoo-in when Moffat took over because obviously they were on Charlotte together. It would just make sense. But now it seems less certain. Do you think... I mean, Mark is still very involved in the show. He still does Big Finish. Do you think there's any possibility of Mark coming back to take over?
I remember, I think we might have reported on actually, Mark did an interview where he said that when they announced the Series 11 writers and he wasn't on it, Chis Chibnall sent him an email and said, just because you're not writing this series doesn't mean I don't want you to work for Doctor Who anymore. You're still part of the Doctor Who family and all this stuff. But then that means nothing, of course, because Chibnall says he has no involvement in who's going to take over the reins. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I think it's a possibility. I'd like to say it's quite high of a possibility, but at the same, I would be surprised if he hasn't been offered it before.
Yeah, especially because he's very much part of the BBC. He does League of Gentlemen with them. Just this Christmas, I think he did like 2 or 3 ghost stories around Christmas time.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
He's very,
He's
very
got a
much
new
involved.
thing coming out as well at the moment. I think it's called like The Last Man or something like that. He's got a new drama coming out as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that I keep seeing on his Instagram, so that looks cool. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think there must be a reason why he hasn't done it yet, because it would seem bizarre for him not to have been asked.
Yeah.
And the fact that he must have been asked and has clearly said no makes me think that he isn't going to do it. But I would love to see him do it.
Same. I feel like it would definitely be kind of a return to a similar tone to what we had during the Russell Moffat era, because while there was a tonal shift, it was less notable than the one from Moffat to Chibnall. And I feel like it would be returning to that to a certain extent.
100%. Just make sure you can still hear me, can't you?
Yeah, I can.
That's okay. I'm just flicking through my notes on my phone to get my showrunners up.
Okay.
Go for another one, Harry. Who else have you got?
My next one is a great writer. We both really enjoy him. That is Paul Cornell.
Another one of mine. Again, I think there's less of a chance of this happening than there is with Mark Gatiss.
Why do you think that is?
Not to like spread too much gossip, but we've tried to get Paul on the podcast a couple of times, and he's always been very generous and emailed and had conversations with us. But the underlying messages that I get is just he wants to focus on other stuff from Doctor Who. I feel he had a great experience with Russell and doing all that stuff, but then if you look online, there's some beef with him and Moffat. I feel maybe not deliberate, but like I think like Paul Cornell originally came up with the idea for the story that ended up being with Catherine Jenkins, and then it got rejected, and then Moffat wrote it himself and used it as a Christmas special. And he seems to be getting a lot of rejected stuff from the Stephen Moffat era. If you go on Wikipedia and go on like cancelled Doctor Who stories, and then go from like the Moffat era onwards, there's a lot of Paul Cornell cancelled stuff in there.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps in that case, considering there's been some distance between Moffat and the show, maybe that means it's more likely he will return now. I don't know.
Perhaps, yeah. But I don't know. I've never met Paul. We've exchanged emails once or twice, and the thing I get from that is that he just wants to distance himself from Doctor Who in general.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well,
but I would love him. He out of all the old guard people I've got, he's the one I would want the most.
Yeah, especially considering how excellent Human Nature and The Family of Blood were. I think he's a phenomenal 100%. Writer. He's great for Doctor Who. I would be really interesting to see what do a showrunner, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. Can I go with one of mine?
Yes.
Okay, I've got Peter McKee, who I believe that's how you pronounce this. Who wrote Kabla.
As well as co-writing Praxius.
What's that? Is that a Doctor Who episode?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, mainly because his name got thrown around. Oh, pardon me, I just punched the desk. His name got thrown around a little while ago, and I think we even reported on it as a future showrunner.
Yes.
So, if there's any belief in that, and I think he's somebody who's had enough of an impact on the Chibnall era for the BBC to consider him, because Kablam is my favourite Whittaker episode.
Okay, interesting.
So I would love him to take over.
So you think out of the Chibnall's current writing team, is he the one you'd most want?
He's the one I most want. Maybe not the one I would expect to end up as showrunner, but I'm not sure. I have to wait and see.
I feel like he's closer to the realms of possibility, especially since he's also created his own drama series, Wentworth. So he's been a showrunner before.
Yes, yeah. That's a good point, actually. I hadn't considered that with some of my options. Yeah.
Interesting.
Another one I've got is Vinyar Patel, who wrote Fugitive of the Jadoon.
Oh, I've not got them.
Which my autocorrect I've just noticed is changed to Fugitive of Jason. I believe he wrote that episode and maybe one more, and that's it. He's only written 2 episodes of Doctor Who, but the episodes he's written have been ones that fans have enjoyed or have been turning points within the show. And it would seem strange to me to give someone those responsibilities if you didn't think that they could therefore actually helm the show itself.
Yeah, that's true.
But then that also makes me ask, how much involvement did he have in those scripts? Because like Fugitive of the Jadoon we love because Jack's back in it. But obviously that would have been something that Chibnall would have asked to have been written in to then come up again in the Christmas special. So
as well as the fugitive Doctor herself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So despite having these big moments in them, how responsible is Vinya for those actual moments?
That's true. I mean, was it like a co-credit of him and Chibnall for Fugitive, or was it just him?
It might have been a co-credit. I honestly can't remember. I think TARDIS Wiki or whatever listed it as his work.
Okay.
But perhaps I honestly can't remember.
Yeah. Along those lines, another writer where people are dubious about how much they wrote of the episode itself is Robert Shearman, who wrote Dalek back in series 1. Obviously, that was the big episode that reintroduced the Daleks, and there's a lot of speculation about whether or not the actual decisions about the Dalek itself and what it was able to do came from Robert or Russell himself. But we know a lot of it is definitely from Robert himself because it was a pseudo-adaptation of a Big Finish story he did. But personally, Dalek, I just included him. I don't know if he's within the chance of likelihood at all because Dalek is literally the only TV episode he's written. But Dalek
does a lot of Big Finish stuff, yeah.
But basically, Robert is... And Dalek is probably my favourite episode of the show, perhaps ever. I love Robert Shearman, and I'd love him to come back. I just have no idea how likely it is at all.
Yeah. He's done... that's literally all he's wrote for Big Finish. For Doctor Who, you are right, yeah. I'll go back in with one of mine. Mine is... a Chibnall writer, and that's Joy Wilkinson, who wrote The Witchfinders.
That's a fun
by your
one.
reaction, do you have her suggested on yours as well?
I don't have her, no. I only have one other Chibnall era writer and one Moffat Russell era writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't lie, when going through potential lists of people who could be showrunner, there was just a lot of blokes and a lot of white dudes, and I thought, I didn't want this list so I deliberately went looking for female Doctor Who writers, and there is not many. There really isn't, especially since the series returned, which sucks. And the one that stood out to me, one of my favourites anyway, was Joy Wilkinson. So why the hell not?
Yeah.
I think it would give a refreshing look on the series to have it through a different perspective of eyes.
And in the same vein of that, I've included from series 12. Maxine Alderton, who wrote The Haunting of Villa Diodati. I've not seen this written anywhere, but The Haunting of Villa Diodati is one of my favourite episodes of Doctor Who. I think it's the best episode from the Chibnall era by a landslide. I think it's an excellent, excellent episode. So personally, of kind of the Chibnall era writers, she's my top choice.
Oh, cool. Honestly, what happens in that episode?
That's the one where they go to see Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley and Byron, and then the lone Cyberman comes.
I vaguely... Oh, yeah, I remember. It's all set in that house.
Yeah, but I love that episode. I think that's an excellent, excellent episode.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good choice, actually, Harry. That one had completely slipped past me. Yeah, I like that. I've got one more Old Guard review person, and I'm just slightly time conscious. I think we've got about 10 minutes of realistic time we can talk about this left. So I'll try and whiz through this last one. My last one is Toby Whitehouse.
That's the same one for me.
Oh, brilliant. There we go then. Who wrote School Reunion, and it's just generally wrote some fantastic episodes of Doctor Who. And his name, I just keep getting seen thrown around by Doctor Who fans. And it's not saying, how about Toby Whitehouse? It's like, can we please, for the love of God, just have him now? We've waited so long. Yeah. We want him to be the showrunner.
Yeah, I know you've written some fan favourites. He was one of the top choices following Moffat for fans. So, I mean, it makes sense for him to go back to him.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to never written for the show, but there's a possibility. I've only got 3 options, so I'll let you go first. Okay,
the first one I've got is Jed Mercurio, who was the showrunner for Line of Duty and Bodyguard, 2 massive BBC dramas.
I have his name for Never Gonna Happen.
Really? Why do you think he's never gonna happen?
I feel like he's probably maybe too expensive, or he has something else in the works.
Yeah, that's true. I know he had something that debuted at the start of this year. The thing is, for me, if I was a BBC, I was like, right, they clearly care about Doctor Who because they're having this centenary special. They care about Doctor Who to a certain extent, no matter what some people may want to believe. If they want to revive Doctor Who in a way that will pull in people, get people talking about it every week, get trending on Twitter, why don't they get the guy who's done 2 shows that have done just that? That's my
saw
thinking.
it. Yeah, exactly. I saw a headline from the Telegraph today that I didn't get because you have to be a subscription member to read the Telegraph, and I'm not. And it just said how to save Doctor Who, and it said make it more adult, bring back David Tennant, add sex. I was like, yep, there you go. That's why we don't listen to everybody's opinion.
Those are 3 terrible ideas. I'm sorry.
They were. I'll give you one of mine. Never written for the show, but a good possibility.
Okay.
And that's Simon Allen, who has written The Musketeers.
Okay.
And also a series called The Watch as well, which I think is out at the moment. I'm not sure.
Okay, why do you pick them?
I picked him because, well, The Musketeers was great, and people really enjoyed that, and it starred some great people. I know Capaldi was in it, and it's just one of those things that I feel has been sort of under the radar, that sort of BBC show that has people really liked but have sort of forgotten about, really. So I feel like he's a good possibility because he's not everybody's target. So that's I feel true. Like there's just a chance there that could work.
That's interesting. Yeah, my next one is possibly too big for the show. It's Jack Thorne. He's probably best known as, he's been around for a while, very acclaimed writer. Best known as kind of the head writer for his Dark Materials. But he also was one of the writers for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, the play for that. He wrote a very acclaimed series a few years ago for Channel 4 called National Treasure. Basically, he's been around the block, very acclaimed writer, has written kind of fantasy before with his Dark Materials. Question of whether or not he'd do Doctor Who. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's always the thing, isn't it? Is would they do it? I've got someone I know you admire, Jimmy McGovern, who wrote Time for BBC.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, mainly because that's a BBC drama at the moment that did quite well. So why? A lot of these they wrote for the BBC, it did well. Why wouldn't they ask him?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a question of how much interest in Doctor Who they have, because all the head writers we've had so far have been fans of the show. And do you need to be a fan of the show to be showrunner? I'm not sure. Maybe you just need to be a damn good writer. Yeah,
exactly. I just had one more, and I've just deleted it, which sucks. Oh no, here it is. Matthew Hall, who wrote Keeping Faith, which is the Eva Mills drama that was recently on BBC as well. That seems to get good reviews.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think. Obviously, they've never written for the show before, but they've written good drama, and I feel Doctor Who is not just a sci-fi show; it is a drama.
That's true. And
I feel like you need to get that right to make people care about sonic screwdrivers. People don't care about sonic screwdrivers if there's no point in them being there.
Absolutely, 100%.
Sorry, go on.
These next 2 for me are Suzanne Heathcote and Laura Neal, who are the head writers for Killing Eve Series 3 and Series 4, respectively. Killing Eve has done this very cool thing where every series has had a different female head writer. And maybe the next thing, we've had a female doctor, maybe we should have a female head writer. So I feel like either of these could be very viable choices. And I know people really like Killing Eve, and it's another one of those shows that always pulls in viewers. So it would be kind of a good kind of hook to get people in.
Shall we go on to Never Gonna Happen?
Oh, I just have one more notable one for TV writers, which is
go for it.
American writer J. Michael Straczynski, I think his name is. He's an American writer who's written for sci-fi shows such as Babylon 5, and he actually said on Twitter that he would love the opportunity to do it if he was given the opportunity. Cool. He just doesn't know whether or not he would do it because he's American. Do you think an American could write Doctor Who?
Yeah, I don't see why not. We've had a Welsh person do it and a Scottish person do it. Why not have an American person do it?
Yeah.
As long as they're familiar with the show. I think you have to be familiar with the show. I think that's a criteria. You don't necessarily have to be a fanboy, but you have to know the characters and stuff like that.
I mean, this guy clearly was familiar, because in his tweets, he said he'd do it in a heartbeat, or is that 2 heartbeats, because of the 2 hearts thing.
Fair dues.
So he knows
he's
what
clearly a big fan.
About. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go on to Never Gonna Happen, maybe. Let me guess one of yours. Is one of them Neil Gaiman?
Yes, because Neil Gaiman, I think he's great, wrote A Doctor's Wife, Good Omens, but he has deconfirmed himself.
Yeah, he
that he's
said,
gonna
didn't he?
be...
He's not going to do it.
Yeah, so he's quite definitively not going to happen.
Did he say why he wasn't going to do it, or is it just
I
because
think
he's busy?
he's just really busy with his other shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've only got 3 here. I'm going to
Okay.
save one of them till last.
Okay.
Matthew Graham, who wrote Life on Mars. Now, I feel that would have worked really well if they weren't working on another series of that show right now.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, it's a Sam Tyler. It's a crossover between Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes.
Were they part of the same universe?
Yeah, have you seen Ashes to Ashes?
I've not seen either, I must confess.
Oh no, yeah. So they did 2 seasons of Life on Mars, then John Sim left, and then they wanted to do another one, so they went a decade forward and brought in a female lead whose name escapes me because I haven't seen the full series, but yeah, so they're doing another series of that.
That's cool. My next.
But I know that Matthew. Sorry, can I just say I know that Matthew is a big fan of Doctor Who because Sam Tyler was named after Rose Tyler. So there you go.
Oh right, cool.
Yeah.
The next 2 that definitely aren't going to happen are Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat. They're not coming back. They're not coming back.
They're not coming back.
They're done with the show.
Next.
They're doing other things. Okay, next for me, another 2 are putting together. The writers for Killing Eve Series 1 and Killing Eve Series 2 are Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Emerald Fennell. The thing is...
I've never seen Killing Eve. Is there a showrunner and they just have head writers? Because who's in charge of
I don't think
hiring those people?
I think each series just has a different head writer / showrunner. I think they must have the same producer across them. I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge produces it all, I think.
Okay.
But she only...
Okay,
yeah. Because I know kind of Emerald was a friend of hers before she became the head writer of Series 2. But basically,
right, yeah, I understood.
They're both way too big. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is in the States now. She did Fleabag. She's huge. Emerald Fennell just won an Oscar for writing Promising Young Woman. Neither of them are going to come back to do Doctor Who.
Yeah.
They're in Hollywood
my
now.
next choice, they're in La La Land. My next choice is Charlie Brooker, who wrote Black Mirror.
Oh, okay.
I feel that could be a really fun sort of psycho sort of vibe to it. That sort of twisted reality stuff. But I think that's maybe a decision that the BBC don't want to go in.
I also think Charlie Brooker's also a really funny writer. I think he has all the credentials to write for Doctor Who. I just can't see him writing for Doctor Who. I feel like it would be almost too anarchic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be brilliant. I'd love watching it, but I can't see it happening.
No.
Last couple people for me are Michaela Cole, just because similar reason to Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She's kind of going that trajectory. She's been cast in X Black Panther. I can't see her doing Doctor Who again. She's skyrocketing up to Hollywood. And finally, I heard my friend said they saw one person online say this, and it's completely ridiculous. Taika Waititi is... I don't know why somebody even suggested Taika Waititi.
I mean, it would work, but it's never, ever going to happen.
Taika Waititi is never going to write for Doctor Who. I'm sorry.
No,
it's not
that doesn't
happen.
mean I don't want to see it, because I do want to see that. But
okay.
It's not going to happen. That's a pipe dream.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've powered through those.
I've got one more. One more I haven't mentioned.
You have one more?
Yeah. Reese Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton.
That's interesting. It's not going to happen, but it's interesting.
Exactly. They're all really interesting, but it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I just thought they would be so good because the quirkiness of Inside Number 9, and I've seen that episode where they're in a wardrobe so many times. It's so funny.
But it's
just they're friends with Mark Gatiss.
Imagine how it would feel for Mark Gatiss if his two friends who he worked with, who are nowhere near as much of a Doctor Who fan as he is, became showrunners over him. Imagine how Mark Gatiss would actually feel. But I mean, you never know. Remember, Chris Eccleston was in that one episode of League of Gentlemen, so
he was.
Who knows?
Yeah, you're right, Harry. We powered through them because I've got to go out for tea. So,
yeah, I hope people enjoy. Oh, hold on, what's happened? My laptop is it on? What's happened? Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. I'm still recording.
Oh, you're still recording. Apparently, this is still on as well. We'll find out anyway. But yeah, I've got to go out for tea. So thanks very much for everybody for listening thus far. But yeah, we'll be back in a month. I'm looking forward to coming back because it's actually been longer for us than it has been for the listeners since we last watched some Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's been a while. You just kind of needed
a
break so you wouldn't have Doctor Who burnout.
Exactly, and I feel like the news of Jodie returning and stuff like that has helped. Jodie leaving has sort of helped me infuse my passion for Doctor Who again.
Yeah, I feel like I'm ready to watch more Doctor Who. Speaking of which, it's time for the watch long segment, isn't it?
So, it is, Harry.
No. You should introduce it, Tim.
Oh.
You should. I've had to go through. I've been put through the ringer, and you've called me out for all these really bad segues. You do it.
Well, okay. Well, I said to you before the podcast started that I need to go blow my nose because this last week I've been full of cold. It's not been COVID. I've been doing my flow test before I've been going out, and I'm all fine. Which is all very well and good because it meant I didn't actually have to go and see a doctor, which is okay because they've got more important things that I always think, especially with COVID and stuff like that. And they've got their own family. They probably have a son or even a daughter. Talking of which, here's the doctor's daughter.
Okay, that was pretty good.
That was an easy one. That wasn't the planet of the Ood.
Yeah, or the Strontaran stratagem.
That's very true. So we'll see you in a month, but there will be stuff on before then as well for you all to listen and check out too. So keep an eye on all our socials, as Harry mentioned earlier, and we'll see you on the flip side of these adverts.
Woo!
Shut up! Shut it down, pop up!
Make sure you subscribe to the official Bigger on the Inside podcast.
What's the point in having?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Big on the Inside, the new Who Doctor Who Watch Long podcast. It's the bit where we watch an episode. Harry, what is that episode this week?
This week we're watching The Doctor's Daughter by Stephen Greenhorn.
That's right. And has he done anything with Doctor Who since or before, or do I need to get on TARDIS Wiki?
His name rings a bell. I feel like this is the first time we've seen Greenhorn's name.
Stephen Greenhorn. Let's have a quick look here. TARDIS Wiki. Here we go. Let's have a look. Apparently, I've been on this before. Just The Doctor's Daughter, I believe. Yeah.
Really? Is that it?
The Lazarus Experiment and The Doctor's Daughter. He also wrote the online comic strip Mind of Shadows. Stephen Greenwood created the Half and introduced Jenny, the Doctor's daughter. He is usually credited on Doctor Who whenever the Half made reappearances, such as The Magician's Apprentice. So there you go. Yeah, so it's only 2 installments, this being his last. Which is surprising because I enjoyed this episode. I know it's got a mixed response online. People claiming it to be like the most clickbaity Doctor Who episode ever. But personally, I enjoyed it. But before I get into what I think, Harry, what did you think of The Doctor's Daughter?
I think it's a cool episode and it introduces a lot of fun ideas that kind of has a lot of fun exploring. I just wish that there was something interesting that could be discussed about the casting of actors in this episode and what happened to their lives outside of this episode. But unfortunately, there's nothing like that with this episode.
Nope,
so we'll just have to talk about the episode itself. Yeah.
Let's just talk about the episode itself, indeed. Let's start at the very start of the episode. A 3-person TARDIS crew, which was fun to see. The 10th Doctor, Donna, and Martha. That was quite interesting dynamic at the very start, especially with the TARDIS going AWOL and the Doctor referencing his hand and Martha having to fill Donna in on past adventures and stuff like that in that very short opening segment we get there. I think that's quite a fun dynamic, actually, those three. And throughout this episode, it's a shame that Martha, despite it being a returning episode for Martha, is actually sent off somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a cool dynamic. It's kind of cool. I feel like it's kind of established that kind of Martha and Donna have a pretty nice kind of relationship and a good back and forth. They kind of have they have different experiences and yet similar experiences and different backgrounds and yet a lot of things in common. It's a cool dynamic between them. So it would have been cool to see more of that. But we get some of it at the start and some of it at the end. It's very lovely.
It's interesting that they bring Martha back, and then in the previous episodes, Martha is turned into a clone, so we don't really get much actual Martha with the Doctor. And then in this episode, she's distanced from the Doctor entirely.
Yeah. Although the Doctor himself gets cloned, there's a lot of cloning this series, isn't there?
There is. The sequence in which the people, the humans take the Doctor and stick his hand in that machine, I was watching it, I was thinking, why isn't he like restraining them or fighting back or anything like that? And I was sort of thinking, well, the 10th Doctor never really does that. And I was thinking, what if this was the 9th Doctor? He would have proper thrown a punch or something, I imagine.
Do you think he would have thrown a punch?
I think he wouldn't have allowed them to stick his hand in that machine without knowing what's going on. What the bloody hell are you fucking idiots doing? He would have said. And then he would have turned and uppercut somebody.
Not with that language. It's before Watershed.
Oh, it is. How about a nice cup of absolutely fantastic?
Oh, mine is bad.
That's my favourite. That's my favourite Ninth Doctor meme. I keep seeing it around. What do you think to that? The fact that he doesn't. That could have been anything, and he just sort of didn't really do much about it to stop what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess what else could he have done?
I mean, it's clearly a plot point, isn't it? Because if he did resist, that would have been it.
The thing that I didn't quite follow is why exactly did they grab the Doctor and put him in and make a clone of him? Because they didn't do that for anyone else on the TARDIS team, just for the Doctor. They never really explained why.
Is that just because when Jenny sort of came out, shit really hit the fan quite quickly, didn't it? The half arrived with their guns and they blew up half of the tunnel.
Yeah, that is true.
But it would have maybe been interesting if they had put Donna or Martha in the machine instead. You could have had an episode just called Martha's Daughter. And everyone like, what is this?
What would Martha been like?
What do you think to the Doctor's daughter? What do you think to Jenny? Let's talk about her, the first half of this episode, because I think it's fair to say the Doctor isn't a big fan of Jenny to start with. He's not that keen on having her around. He doesn't particularly acknowledge, even though he says, she's my daughter, he doesn't really sort of warm to her very much.
Yeah, it's kind of... Because obviously, the way it's explained in the show is that kind of like these clones are designed with a mindset of being soldiers and fighting for war. And I guess it's kind of revealed as the episode goes on that kind of a lot of the Doctor, perhaps more than he cares to admit, does have that almost soldier-like mentality.
Yeah.
To see it, to see that aspect of himself kind of embodied in such a explicitly militaristic way. Kind of he doesn't like seeing that reflection of himself and that part of himself manifest in that manner.
It's like Jenny's born for war, isn't she? That's what she's sort of created to do, whereas the Doctor, he's still recovering from a war. So it's almost like these two sides that are sort of clashing against each other. And I like that sequence in which they are locked up and he's like, she calls him a general, I think, doesn't she, Jenny? She says, you're sat there planning out this movement and how we're going to get around the base and do all this stuff. And I think it's the first time that's really been brought to the attention of the audience, is that despite the Doctor saying, you know, he's not a violent person. Well, he isn't a violent person, but, you know, he there is war within him and there's that sort of military side to him. It's interesting to have that brought to the front, like, you know, the spotlight to share slightly.
That's another thing that's kind of become recurring within this series, because obviously, last week's 2 episodes were all unit-based, and kind of there's a very explicit thing said about how the Doctor kind of led Martha down this line of work and this lifestyle. He almost weaponized her indirectly.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it's quite interesting that when he's greeted with somebody who is instantly designed for war, he doesn't. You know, there is a difference there, isn't there? It's all right if it's up to him. What are you doing?
Sorry, I'm just.
Harry has this thing, everybody. Well, I will be talking. I tend not to look at the laptop screen as I'm talking to Harry. I wander around the room. And I look across, and he's 99% of the time fiddling with something. And this time, what was that you were fiddling with there? Was that a pair of tweezers?
Yeah, a pair of tweezers.
Yeah. And he's just sort of fiddling with them, just sort of clipping them away, trying to balance them on his nose. As long as the listeners are enjoying this. I spoke about it a second ago, in which Martha is kidnapped by the Half, and she sort of spent a lot of her time away from the main action of this episode. I like her interaction with the Half species. What did you think to that?
Yeah, I know the Half are interesting because they're not. It kind of makes it much less of a one-sided thing. We're not just seeing the human side of the conflict by splitting our kind of heroes up with that and the Half. It very much becomes kind of a war of two sides, and they almost go out of their way. They don't go out of their way to not make the Half seem as violent. They're clearly, also soldiers, but it's clear that they're not just generic monsters. They clearly are civilized themselves and have a community and a civilization that which matches the sophistication of the more human side.
Yeah. They did it with what I'm about to say relates back to Planet of the Ood as well, in which they do sort of the alien creature isn't always necessarily the bad guy. And I quite like that. The alien creature, it's not like sort of saying, oh, an alien, evil, kill it, or to stop whatever it's doing. It's like, actually, no, sometimes it has a better point than what anybody else actually has to say. And so far, those episodes have actually been some of my favourite this series.
I mean, at the end of this one, there isn't really any kind of villain, is there? Like, no one's an outright villain. There's that older soldier on the human side who's a bit dodged, but even at the end, he's not like imprisoned or anything. At least that we see, he kind of just feels a bit shit about himself. Yeah.
Let's go back to Jenny, because that's sort of the main point of this episode. I particularly like the sequence in which the Doctor hears both her heartbeats, and there's that sort of realization of she actually, kind of is slightly related to him. But then it leads to quite an interesting moment with the 10th Doctor, in which Donna asks if she's a Time Lord, and he gets quite angry about that because there is no Time Lord, and you can't just. It seems like this is the start of what we see in his final episodes, that sort of rage moment where almost being a Time Lord is something you have to earn, and he's earned it, and somebody coming along and just being cloned from him and claiming to be a Time Lord isn't enough. And she does eventually throughout the episode earn his respect, but that starting point of that relationship and that sort of friendship that blossoms is probably not what a lot of audience members would have expected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's established kind of the Doctor believes that there's more to being a Time Lord than simply genetics. It is about kind of like kind of a history as a race. You say it's a shared suffering or something like that.
Yeah, he does mention something like that, doesn't he? Yeah. I like the fact that they've been subtle about carrying over characteristics from the 10th Doctor into Jenny. I like the fact that one of them is the fact that they could basically get out of any situation by flirting with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
As soon as she goes up to his bar, she flirts with that guy, gives him a snog, and then she's out of trouble instantly. Whereas the 10th Doctor basically does that almost every week. Someone falls in love with him, he uses it to his advantage and saves the day.
Although I think that there could be an argument to make that the 10th Doctor maybe isn't as aware that's what he's doing, or he pretends he isn't.
Yeah, that's true. He never really goes into a situation and goes, "Hello, ladies." He sort of wanders up and he sort of goes, "Oh, you're flirting with me. I'm going to use this to my advantage to stop the adipose," or whatever he ends up doing.
Yeah.
What do you think to the sequence where Jenny ends up doing all those backflips?
It's kind of like the big kind of. I get why it's there. It's like that kind of big spectacle moment of the show, the action set piece.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like what follows afterwards as well, where the Doctor greets her again, and he's like really chuffed that she managed to use her own logic to get out of that situation.
Yeah, the logic of flipping well.
Can you do a backflip, Harry?
I mean, it's been established now quite fairly that kind of it runs in the Doctor's DNA, or it's the 10th Doctor's DNA, that he has really good hand-eye coordination.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah, so why wouldn't Jenny be doing this? I think it would have been great if she just picked up a Satsuma and just lobbed it.
Just in the right spot to deactivate the lasers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know if you found it emotional. It's clearly played to be emotional. Where Martha is about to drown and that half jumps in and saves her. And Martha selfishly doesn't bother to try and offer her hand to save the half and just sort of watches the poor fish hybrid human drown in a muddy puddle. What did you think of that?
Or something
No, she doesn't.
like that?
He just sort of just disappears with his little bubbles going.
I mean, could you argue he's already too far gone by that point?
Yeah, but if I saw you drowning in quicksand and I couldn't get near the quicksand, you would at least put your arm out. Go, look, I'm trying. It's not going to help, but I'm trying.
Is that what you'll be thinking in my last dying moments? You're like, I want him to know that I'm trying.
Yeah, at least I'm giving it a
It's
ruddy
all about
good
you,
go.
isn't it, Tim? In my dying moments, it's all about how you look, isn't it, Tim?
I'll be going, we should really be getting the audio for this. Quick, Harry, now, what did you think to Series 5? Quickly.
Oh, well, I think that Matt Smith, it's initially it's almost a 10th Doctor like thing. Where's it go?
Something that I don't think is talked about a lot with this episode is that the relationship between the Doctor and Jenny is very father-daughtery. But what about the relationship between the three of them with Jenny, Donna, and the Doctor? Because by stereotype and by the nature of relationship, Donna automatically sort of becomes a mother figure to Jenny. She's like the cool mum almost. She gives Jenny her name. She helps the Doctor warm to Jenny. So what do you think about the relationship between Jenny and Donna in that respect? And also the new relationship that sort of creates for the Doctor and Donna. That sort of, you got a mother-daughter relationship and almost a wife and husband sort of relationship going on there as well.
Have you not noticed, though, but I mean, almost every episode, they've made a point that at some point, the Doctor and Donna are like, no, we're not a couple. We're not married. Stop saying that.
Yeah, the Doctor and Donna don't have a sort of a love relationship, but they've got that element that you admire to have in a long-term marriage, I feel, which is just good mates. And you look at a husband and wife, you go, oh, they're having a great time with their life. And I feel that's what the Doctor and Donna have, so people assume that there must be a couple. But I quite like the relationship that they have in this, which is Donna she really loves Jenny, and she has to sort of encourage the Doctor to do so as well.
I don't know if like a motherly position is quite accurate, though. I denote Donna more to the role of, not denote, assign her more to the role of the cool aunt.
A cool stepmom.
I feel like cool aunt. I feel like that's what I would say.
Yeah. What do you think that does then with the Doctor and Donna's relationship in that situation?
I think like it's almost I don't know, sibling-esque. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose it is a little bit, isn't it? Yeah, sort of older sibling sort of thing of. Yeah, I guess I never looked at it like that. Yeah, because it doesn't become a relationship where, from Jenny's point of view, that's her mother and father. She doesn't really have a strong bond with Donna, despite knowing Donna as long as she's known the Doctor.
Oh yeah, she wants to make her dad proud. Despite being a clone, she has that kind of desire to have parental acceptance.
Yeah. For I think the second time in the 10th Doctor's tenure, he speaks about his family, and he mentions that they're pretty much all dead. He says he has kids at one point, or he had children, they're dead, which would imply that he had a wife and she's dead, imagining that they died in the Time War is what I would imagine.
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you. I mean, if you go back to the very start of the show, we have the Doctor and his granddaughter. I have to assume that the rest of his family was lost before the start of the show back in the 60s.
Perhaps. Or I look at it that perhaps the Doctor had a great relationship with his granddaughter, closer relationship than perhaps he did with his own children or his parents, and therefore when he made the leap to leave Gallifrey, he took Susan with him and left his rest of his family there in hopes that one day they would join him.
Interesting. I mean, it's not something that I don't know if there's some kind of like rule book or Bible as to what writers can and can't talk about, but I imagine one of the big rules in Red Underlined, if there is such a thing, is don't reveal what happened to the Doctor's family.
Yeah, you can throw hints and suggestions, but maybe not in stone, this is what happened.
Yeah, I don't feel like we'll ever get more than what we get here.
Yeah.
Unless we already have done extended media.
Sorry, go on. What was you saying?
I was going to say, unless we have done an extended media, which we don't know about.
Yeah, perhaps they have done it. There's probably a comic or something out there that explains it slightly. Let's jump to the conclusion of the episode, in which the Doctor, the Half, and the Human, and Jenny, and Martha, and Donna, they all meet up in the big garden room, and the Doctor picks up that glass bowl and he smashes it on the ground and does a big speech. And then Jenny's shot. She when she's shot, right? I sort of thought, because obviously I know it's coming, so it wasn't totally emotional. But I sort of thought, this guy, he's really shit out of luck when it comes to meeting new people. Like 90% of the new people the Doctor meets, they die almost instantly.
Just don't be friends with the Doctor. If you see someone in quirky clothing saying, "Hey, I need to fight an alien/monster," just turn and go the other way. Just like, nah, I got a life to live. Don't want any of this.
What do you think then to the death of Jennifer?
It's played very well by Tennant, especially. Like, manages to kind of get something very real feeling out of the bit when he's holding her in his arms. Is like, no, I've got so much to show and all that. Yeah. Although I think kind of the bit that most people remember is the part afterwards when he makes the whole speech of that he's a man who never would. Kind of that's a phrase I've heard kind of used to almost encapsulate the 10th Doctor by some people. Do you feel like that is kind of an apt phrase to encapsulate what the 10th Doctor is all about? The man who never would? Or do you think that's just like one part of him?
I think that's one part of him. I think he would if he came to it. He comes close to it several times, doesn't he? He gets pretty close a number of times to killing people deliberately. I remember watching this episode go out and thinking, oh, he's actually going to shoot that guy. And I think that's one of the only times I thought, oh, Christ, we're getting, the Doctor's, we're getting to a point now where there is a character development coming in here. And even watching it back, I was sort of thinking, oh, I definitely remember thinking the Doctor was about to shoot that old guy straight through the head.
But I feel like that if you compare him to like other new Doctors, like Eccleston, Smith, and Capaldi have all definitely come much closer to killing people. I mean, Capaldi like bloody shoots a Time Lord in Hellbent.
Yeah, arguably
there are
you can
moments
also say
where
sorry,
Smith and Eccleston very much had intent to kill.
Yeah.
The Ninth Doctor would have killed that Dalek had Rose not stopped him,
Yeah. There's a really good scene. There's a really good shot there in that bit where Jenny gets shot and the Doctor's sort of holding it. It just cuts to a bunch of half who all just like look at each other like really awkwardly, just sort of just shuffle away. They're like, "Oh, we don't know what's going on here."
I think it's the whole thing is like the same thing with like Stormtroopers, where when you have those kind of unified costumes, it can be quite easy to make those costumes funny.
Yeah, especially with the lack of emotion. Like you look at the Ood in Planet of the Ood, and there's a lot of physical movement going on there with the prosthetics on the face and Sontarans as well. With the half, I don't really even remember them blinking. The bubbles go, but that's about it.
So are you saying that you feel like this is one of the weaker monster?
Not really. I think it's a really good design, but they just don't. It's a really good design. I think they look great, but I feel I'd like to see them again. But I don't know. I don't really have anything to say about them because we don't learn much about them.
Did you say they appeared again in The Magician's Apprentice?
Yeah, I imagine in the background or something like that, though.
Yeah, because I can't remember much of that episode at all.
No, I can't. I found the ending of this episode to be slightly a rushed conclusion almost. But one thing that sort of caught me off.
As in the thing with Jenny coming back to life or something else?
No, not that. Like before that, like they just suddenly appear in the garden room and they're like, "Oh, here we are. We solved out the numbers thing, and you know, I'm now going to smash that thing. Everything's great. Oh wait, no, Jenny's dead. You know, that sort of sequence there seems quite rushed. And one thing that sort of caught my eye was when the doctor's like, "Oh, she should regenerate. She's part Time Lord," and Martha says no, and he sort of goes, "Yeah, you're probably right." Like, what's he on about? He's the doctor. He knows this species. He knows what can happen. But Martha's like, "Nah, not happening." And he just sort of just buys it, goes with it.
Yeah, but it's right. She isn't.
But she does come back to life, and she gives out some sort of regeneration
that
energy.
wasn't regeneration energy. That was energy from the ball thing.
Oh, was it? Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, that's why she didn't change her face.
But then
you look at a similar effect. It definitely wasn't regeneration. Definitely
I can't remember. But then you look at when he meets Riversong later in the series. He does a lot to save her. And he suddenly just met her, and you know, he doesn't really know who she is.
That's his wife, isn't it?
But he doesn't really know that, though, does he? I just feel it seemed out of character for the 10th Doctor not to do anything to try and save Jenny. Whereas when Elton's girlfriend died in Series 2, he brings her back to life as a paving slab.
Maybe he's just kind of too overcome emotionally to think straight there. Maybe his connection to it is too strong.
What was that? Sorry, you disappeared out of...
Sorry. I mean, maybe I was just saying maybe he's too overcome with emotion this bit. Like maybe kind of the fact that he has that strong bond actually prevents him from being able to think rationally and logically.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. I'm all out of notes. No notes. Anything you want to add there, Harry, about the Doctor's daughter that we haven't spoken about?
No, I think we've discussed everything that could possibly be mentioned about this episode. There's nothing inside or out of it that can be said further.
That's true. I asked you guys on Instagram what you think of the episode. Doctor Who on Target says, thought this was a setup to a spin-off, but the episode itself was poor. Nitpick.who says, really didn't need her own spin-off. I'm sorry. That's all right. You didn't get one. And Alicia Oakley, friend of the show, who did the amazing Avatar artwork for us, says, kind of wants to know what she's up to now. I would totally watch a spin-off series. And there was a couple more comments as well that I don't have time for, unfortunately. But yeah, let's talk about that for a second. When this episode ended and she whizzes off into space, when it aired, I probably thought there was going to be a spin-off. Before watching this, I sort of thought, maybe it was a bit, maybe we wished a bit too hard for something that wasn't really going to happen. But now watching it again, I sort of think there was such a possibility for something like that.
I don't think it would have been a spin-off, but I'm surprised that she never made a return in the main show as a kind of recurring Riversong-esque type companion.
Yeah.
Like they kind of set it up that she could bump back into the Doctor at any point if the Doctor went back to that time period, but they haven't done it yet.
Yeah. It's disappointing though, because I would like to see Jenny return. Georgia Moffat's amazing as Jenny, and she's done several Big Finish stuff and been great.
Yeah. Interesting.
Lots of interesting things there, but how much of it did you remember, Harry? It's time for the quiz!
You, not me. I hate being patient. Patience is for wimps.
I'm not going to remember. You better not mention all of like the dates on the number plates because I'm not going to know.
Question number 1. What shape scar is left on the Doctor's hand after his hand is put into that machine?
Oh, it's like a line and there's a bit coming out of it, isn't there?
What letter would it look like?
It's like an L?
Oh, it's a Y.
Oh.
Jesus Christ. Great start. What zone does the Doctor claim he is from when he's talking to that old military guy? It's a north, south, east, or west?
Zone South.
Eastern.
Oh.
The Doctor tells the General to look up genocide in the dictionary, and he says there will be a picture of himself there with what words printed across it?
Something like, "Don't you dare."
Over my dead body.
Oh, right.
Okay, so 3 out of 4, not great. Final question: how many numbers appear in the number plate sequences? I want to know, when you look at one of those number plates, how many different numbers are on them. You can work this out.
Is it 10?
It's 8.
Oh.
Yeah, it is 8. I'm just checking. Yeah, 0 out of 4 there, Harry. That's
Again.
not that good. What did you think to this episode, then? Did you enjoy it? Because I really enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, it was a fun ep. Series 4, I forget about Series 4. I remember a couple of standouts in Series 4, but I often forget about kind of ones like this, even more so than kind of Series 3 episodes. So I'm being pleasantly surprised quite a bit watching through this one.
Yeah, I am as well. It's that time of the show where we recommend bits and bobs to each other.
Before I go, I just want to tell you you were fantastic.
I had something to recommend. It's completely gone out of my head. Harry, you can go first this time.
Oh no, the same thing happened to me, definitely.
I did have something to recommend, and honestly, that's it. I remember what I want to recommend. Recently, I finished my second year at university, and I'm currently in a limbo situation between. Oh, we should probably touch on this in a minute as well. Between moving flats, moving back home, and starting work and all this stuff. So I'm in this weird never zone of not really knowing what I'm doing. So I rejoined the gym. I'm not the most physically fit person. I tend to do like 40 minutes to an hour's exercise at the gym. I go on a running machine and on the bicycle, and I just watch an episode of Family Guy, and then I'll go and watch an episode of The Simpsons. It makes it go a lot quicker because you can enjoy an episode of telly. So that's really what I'm going to recommend, is just trying to stay somewhat fit and healthy. If you maybe the gym isn't necessarily for you want to go for a run, listen to some podcasts. But I forgot how much I enjoyed doing gym stuff. It's actually quite fun, and especially this episode isn't sponsored by Pure Gym, but I feel for maybe listeners of this podcast, students, teenagers, that sort of thing, it's a really good cheap gym, 24 hours, that sort of stuff, and it comes with a great app as well where it tracks your progress and stuff like that. So that's what I'd like to recommend, is basically trying to do something physically active instead of doing what we do 90% of the time, which is sitting in front of a computer watching an adipose run around.
Right. And I'm going to recommend something which I'm probably going to be considering the upload schedule. This is going to be coming way, way later down the line. So hopefully I've already done it by the time I say it. But I'm going to recommend vaccinations.
My first jab.
Yeah, earlier this week I got my first jab at the time of recording. And feeling good, feeling great. It's been so long in the waiting, and I'm so glad I've got it. I believe every adult, as in everyone 18 or over at the time of recording, is able to get the vaccine now. So nothing to stop you from ringing up and getting yourself sorted.
Do you mind me asking you which one you got?
I got the Pfizer.
I got the Pfizer one. I got it in my right arm.
I got it in my right arm as well because I'm left-handed.
Yeah, maybe if people are worried about it, I generally wouldn't be. I sat down next to the doctor and she said, which arm would you like it in? I said, oh, just put it in this one. You're sat on this side. And I thought she went to, where they sometimes when they take blood or something, they clean the skin just beforehand to not get the needle infected or anything like that. I thought that's what she went to do. And then I was like talking about something about, not living in the area much anymore. And then she went, okay, and here you go, Mr. Saxby, here's your leaflet. Just go sit up there for 15 minutes. And if you feel a bit drowsy, just let us know. And I went, oh, have you done it? And she went, yeah. Generally did not feel
I didn't realise it had gone in until it came out.
Yeah.
And also, like, it sounds like, I know, obviously, like, the aftermath differs between people. But for me, like, my arm felt a little sore for a couple of days, and then that was it.
Yeah, mine was fine throughout the day. Then I went to work in the evening and I leant up against a door on that arm. And my arm, it basically felt, you know, when you wear a pajama top and you roll around a lot in your sleep and it gets really tight and you can't move your arm as much for a little bit and then you untangle your t-shirt. I sort of felt like that. I just felt like I was carrying a bit of extra weight on one arm. But, you know, it's been 24 hours plus now since I've had it and it feels fine. It's a little stiff, but it just feels like I've pulled a muscle or something like that. It's nothing mega.
Yeah, same. I'm good.
Yeah. We probably mentioned it at the top of the podcast and probably mentioned it at the start of this series as well. But this is going to be the last episode for about a month. We're taking a mid-season break for reasons I just mentioned. I'm moving flat and it's just a nightmare trying to record when you're traveling and stuff like that. So we will be back. I won't give a date, but it is about a month. There will be videos uploaded to the YouTube channel. So if you listen to this on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, or any other podcast hosting site, and you can listen to, you go over to YouTube and there's some videos coming out there. And also on the podcast feed, there will be some alternative Doctor Who stuff coming out as well. So keep an eye out for that. But we will be back with what, Harry? What episode's next?
Ooh, which one is it again? It's the Unicorn and the Wasp, right?
It is the Unicorn and Wasp. We'll be back with that in about a month's time. So don't go nowhere. Perhaps if you're new, this is the perfect time to go back and listen to our first 3 seasons. See the difference in our opinions on Series 1 with Christopher Eccleston compared to now. So that'll be great. And I'll say goodbye. Thanks for listening. And do you want to say... You probably won't hear from Harry in a month. So do you want to say bye for a little bit, Harry?
Yeah. Before I want to say bye, I want to say, hey, did you know that Georgia Moffat, who plays the Doctor's daughter in this episode, is also the daughter of Peter Davison, the 5th Doctor, which means that she's actually the Doctor's daughter. And also, she then married David Tennant, who plays the 10th Doctor in the episode, making her the Doctor's husband and the Doctor's daughter, and making the Doctor the Doctor's godson and the Doctor's godfather. Isn't that crazy? Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that. I bet you've never heard that before.
Make sure you subscribe to the official Bigger on the Inside podcast.